Shalom, Yasharallah. This your brother Dawada, coming back at you with this here truth again. First and foremost, I want to give all praise unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachak Wadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone that taught us this truth and that rule well. And salutation and much love for you, Akim, pushing this truth and sincerity on the four corners of the earth and enduring afflictions to feed and edify the elect. So I want to jump into this here topic dealing with, not all Israel is going to look the same, and also going into the confusion of faces. All right. And, as also as a cut to you, black only Hebrew Israelites, who claim that the so-called Latinos and Native Americans, they're not the Israelites because they're not so-called black people. They don't look like the so-called black people. All right. But just to cut that, man, the scriptures say the spirit bears witness with our spirit that we are the children of the Most High. All right. And we know that we're the children of Israel based off of that alone, our spirit, and looking at how our spirit is and how, when you look into the scriptures, the prophecies and the descriptions of how these people the prophecies of how these people will turn out to be, and the descriptions of the traits of how these people are. As a quick example, all right, now it says the spirit bear witness with our spirit, we're the children of the Most High. That's speaking from our perspective, but in reality, everybody's spirit bear witness that they are who they, who the scriptures say that they are, right? Now, going back to Jacob and Esau, right? Which we tell you, Jacob is you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, and the Edomites are the so-called white people, right? And we say so-called because this is something they put on themselves. And we're not talking about skin color here, all right? Because these are just terms that you know them about, all right? But nevertheless, as far as the spirit bear witness with our spirit, all right? Now, the scriptures tell us, about Jacob and Esau, right? And about, how the blessing was how the blessing was sold, how Esau sold his blessing, right? Now, Esau sold his blessing for one morsel of meat. All right. Like was that Hebrews chapter 12 said, there's no place of repentance found for him because why? He sold his birthright for one morsel of meat. Right. Now, when you go into that story and things like that, the food wasn't even done. All right. Now, going into the spirit bearer witness. All right. And how we can tell who is who. And it's not based off of skin color. All right. You have a Israelite and the Edomite both go into a restaurant and sit at a steakhouse and order some food. Or a so-called white man and the so-called black man go into a restaurant and sit down and order a steak from a steakhouse. All right. 9 times out of 10, the Edomite is going to want his steak that look like his skin color. All right. It's going to be rare just like that. His name was changed to red, just like he was just like the same damn meat that he wanted. All right. He wanted his meat to look like his flesh. All right. Well, he wanted his meat at the same time, it was looking like his flesh. It wasn't even done. But you ask Jake how they want their meat, basically they'll tell you, I want my meat to look like me. I want it fully cooked, well done. You see what I'm saying? So even, before you talk to an Edomite, they tell you, oh, I'm an Edomite or a so-called white man, whatever, whatnot, not even speaking on race. Just go to a restaurant with them and ask them, what kind of steak they like or whatever, whatnot. You'll see. You see what I'm saying? Hey, that's the spirit bearer witness. Esau way back in the day wanted that raw ass meat just like him. All right. And they still want the same shit today, man. All right. Same with Jacob. Jacob's a plain man dwelling in tents, man. We don't have to, or another thing. Esau living in the damn caves and shit like that. Right. Now, Jacob is a plain man dwelling in tents. We just like to kick it and chill on the weekends, whatever, whatnot, just at the crib, But Esau got to go get all this excitement and stuff like this. And he want to go rock climbing, mountain climbing. But that brings him back to who he used to be. You see what I'm saying? When you look up Petra, Mount Petra, all right, and you look at the designs of Mount Petra, it's the same designs that you see over in Greece. It's the same designs you've seen in Rome, and it's the same designs that you see out there in Washington, D.C., all right? It's the same people, all right? So this is how we know who is who, and it's not based off of your skin color, all right? We just tell you these things because it's easier for you to identify with, all right? So we say like the so-called Negroes are the tribe of Judah, so-called Latinos and Native Americans. These are all Israelites. And we tell you that the so-called white man are the Edomites. All right. But nevertheless, to go a little deeper into that. All right. Again, this is not about skin color only. All right. So, and there's another cut to the so-called black only Hebrew Israelite movement. That's some bullshit. All right. Because again, it's not based off of your skin color. All right. Nevertheless, I'm going to show a couple clips of videos and I'm going to read through the scriptures to pretty much back all these things here up. All right. So I'm going to start with this here video here. As you can see in the image here, this is, this on face value, you would think this is a so-called white woman, right? Now, even with this here woman looks, some people would say, oh, she look albino, right? Which, you have a so-called black person that's so-called albino. They still black. They just, got the skin disorder or whatever. Well, when you go back into the scriptures, That's what Esau had. All right. He was born to a so-called black mother and a so-called black father. All right. But he had what we would call, if he came out in modern day times, we'd be like, oh, he's just albino. Right. And that's what his name Esau meant. Wasted away is he. All right. Because why? His skin pigmentation was wasted away. Just it was no longer there. Just like how we would say with an albino person. All right. But nevertheless, I'm going to show some clips and some videos to where these people don't really, they're not exactly who their outer self says that they are. Who, just walking down the street, like, oh, there's a white man, there's a black man, there's a so-called so on and so forth, But nevertheless, I'm going to get into some of these here videos, all right? I'm not going to play all the videos, just to show you some of these people's, faces and, what they look like, all right? Not your typical Israelites, all right? These are all going to be Israelites, but they're not your typical Israelites, all right? And also the scriptures say, you are what your father is, all right? And I believe it was at camp this week or maybe last week, I wanted to make this analogy. It's like, somebody was talking about some things and mixed this and mixed that. And I was like, you know what? If you take, some say, Florida oranges, right? Well, if you take a so-called Florida orange from Florida and you go plant it in California, you may call it a California orange because it may have different traits in the soil or whatnot. But at the end of the day, no matter where you take that orange seed and you put that seed inside the ground, anywhere on the earth, you're still going to get oranges. There's no place on the planet Earth you can put that orange seed in the ground and you're going to get apples from it. All right. So the same way with a man, no matter where he put his sperm or his seed at, it's still going to bear the same fruit that it came from. So if a so-called black man go and put his seed, put it this way, if there was, let's just say one so-called black man on the island of Puerto Rico with an island full of so-called, white women, let's say Arab women, Chinese women, Japanese women, or, all these different so-called races, right? If you put that man out there with all those women and he impregnate all those women, every last one of those children are so-called black children, all right? No matter what, because again, it's the same thing as you took Florida oranges, that seed, that's going to, grow up a orange tree, and you planted it in 50 different states. At the end of the day, no matter what state you come from, you're still going to come back with an orange, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and play a little bit of this here video.
With a lot of the people that lives out here, you probably wouldn't take them to be black people. You might not look black, but you got the black blood into you.
And you can just tell by her face, man, her characteristics of her. This is a so-called black woman, all right? Now, she goes further down into the video about her genealogy and things like that. And sure enough, this is an actual black woman, all right? And she gives you some information about this here town or what happens, but pretty much everybody in this here town is so-called black people, but damn near nobody look like so-called black people, all right?
Well, my name is Roberta Jeanette Euler, but I go by Bird for a nickname. I've lived here all my life. On my job that I had worked at, they took me to be white. And my best friend, she took me to be white. She was shocked when I told her I'm not white. I am black. I am a black person. And it was, well, you're not that. You think you are. No, I know I am. I was raised that way. But I was also raised, as Mom would say, it doesn't matter what color your skin is. We all serve one God. Now, as you know, this is my home. Over here is my daughter's home, Jessica. Everybody else in here, we're all kinfolks. That's how this community got to be mixed with white and black. It was from the black children. Our children going out marrying white and bringing them in. A lot of them was as light as I am, but we still said we were black. And then we had some real dark ones, but that's okay. They were black, we were black.
All right, but nevertheless, just want to show a little bit about that on that woman. Now, where my grandmother lives, pretty much the same thing, but in reverse. All right? Well, not really in reverse, but it's a small little country town like that. Where now, if I go back over to where my grandma lives, damn near 90% of the people there are my relatives. All right, they're literally these are all my cousins and things like that. We all know who each other is and everything like that. But nevertheless, damn near like when I used to go to school out there, it would be like damn near everybody in the whole school was all my cousins. You know, we would all see each other at family reunions and everything like that. All right. Now, there was a very small population of so-called white people there. And there was quite a bit of white people there. But however, a lot of those so-called white people knew that they were not actually white. All right, that they knew that, you know, things had happened and their great grandfather, these people, they were black people. All right, and they was treated as such. All right, they already knew because this was a small town and everybody knew everybody going all the way back generations. They already knew what it was. All right, and the real white people, they lived in a small section of town in really big houses, whereas everybody else all lived in these same little trailers or whatever, whatnot. All right. That's enough of that there video. I'm gonna play. I'm gonna go to another video here.
Compare Comcast Business to your current provider. My current service provider does not provide half of what you provide.
Now is the perfect time to switch. Get fast, reliable internet for a low price of $49.95 a month. Comcast Business, beyond fast.
So lock it for that commercial.
That is immediately the reaction
go back.
of identify. I'm Tori, and I'm proud to be Black and Latino in America. I grew up being embraced by African Americans and then being treated like low man on the totem pole by a lot, not all, Puerto Ricans.
Now, what's funny here is, you know, you black Israelite only groups would say that this man's not an Israelite because he don't look like, you know, as dark as Akon, right? But nevertheless, when you go into it, this is actually a so-called Judite, all right? You know, he's mixed between, not to say mixed, but, you know, Judah and Ephraim. But nevertheless, this is actually a Judite, all right? But just continuing on. In fact, both of the two people we're going to look at, they're actually both Judites. But on face value, they both so-called look Hispanic, all right? Or Latino, or however you want to put it. But nevertheless, either way, they both Israelite. Both groups are Israelites. But however, just to show you that these people wouldn't look exactly like how you would think. You would think this is a Northern Kingdom brother, but actually this is a Southern Kingdom brother, all right?
And it did nudge me in the direction of identifying with Black and being Black more than being Puerto Rican.
My name is Raquel Casilla Reynoso, and I'm proud to be an Afro-Latina. Those within the Afro-Latino community are trying to identify what that is. Although some say, oh, we know what that is immediately. The reality is it's so diverse.
Now, here's another individual, you know, and she'll go on and tell you that how she, her parents made her straighten her hair or whatever, whatnot, to look less so-called black. All right. But nevertheless, this is actually a so-called black woman. All right. This is, you know, how you would say, well, this would be like a Judite woman. All right. A so-called black woman. All right. This is not even a so-called Latino woman. All right. Because again, going back into your father, you are what your father is. All right. But nevertheless, going, you know, hitting two different points. Not all Israel is going to look the same as far as you black Israelite only. All right. These are both so-called black people from the southern tribes. All right. Where they would, you know, typically look like so-called black people. But however, they look like the northern tribe. All right. Just because they look like the northern tribe, you know, for you people who think that the Hispanics and Latinos aren't the Israelites because they don't look like black people. All right. Which is retarded. Hey, here's a prime example of that. And then also even deeper than that, how we tell you it's not about skin color, you know, so on and so forth. Hey, you might have some, or you definitely going to have some Israelites that look like so-called white people. All right. But nevertheless, it's not based off of what your skin color looks like. For another example, Blake Griffin, his father is a so-called, I believe, Haitian, which is a Levite. All right. Now, Blake Griffin's mother looks like a so-called white woman. I don't know if she's actually a white woman, but she looks like a so-called white woman. And you know, Blake Griffin, the basketball player, looks like he's so-called mixed, you know, really light skinned. Blake Griffin had a child by a woman that looks like a so-called white woman. All right. Now, his child is blonde hair, blue eyes, look like Macaulay Culkin. All right. So now he's walking around. All right. And you just pointing people out based off of skin color. How you going to tell that man that he's not you know, an Israelite, a Levite, you know, or so-called Haitian? All right. Because he's got blonde hair, blue eyes. And you know that Haitians, so-called Haitians, are typically really dark-skinned people. All right. But yet he's at the very lightest skin of the complexion. All right. Again, going into what? We're not going to all look the same. All right. We go into one more.
We can get there faster if we all move together. We can get there faster if we...
Salakia.
Based on our appearance, perceived to be a different race. Even though I don't look black, I still feel black. I get upset because I'm like, can't you see that I'm who I am?
Now with this here woman, all right, she'll go on and further off tell you that people always mistake her for being so-called Hispanic, to where she got to the point where she just learned Spanish, but she's not even mixed with so-called mixed with anything Hispanic at all. All right, but people just think that she's a so-called Hispanic woman or a so-called white woman. All right, they think that she's anything but a so-called black woman when this is actually a so-called black woman. All right.
This black part of me that I feel so strongly identified with, people, they can't see it, to the point where like sometimes even think I'm white.
Chances are many of us have inadvertently passed for...
All right, that was about it that I wanted to play in there. There's a little bit more in there, but nevertheless, we're going to get into some scriptures. You know, because like I said, man, hey, you got some groups out there that saying, you know, black only Israelites, things like that, you know, and the Latinos aren't Israelites because you know, they got to be looking like, you know, Chris Rock or something like that. They got to be black like that, you know, but nah, that's not what it is. You know, even like I just showed you, even the tribe of Judah, who is the so-called Negroes, all right, they're not going to always look like so-called Negroes. All right. Some of them will look like Hispanics. Some of them will look like so-called white people. Some of them will look like Chinese people. All right. And same with the Northern Kingdom. All right. You might have some so-called Mexicans or so-called Issacharites, or not so-called, but so-called Mexicans or Issacharites or so-called Puerto Ricans or Ephraimites. All right. That look Chinese, that look black, that look white. But at the end of the day, they're what? Ephraimites or Issacharites or so on and so forth. All right. Hey, and another thing, with you so-called Negroes, all right. Hey, a lot of you aren't even really Negroes, man. A lot of you Negroes are actually, you know, some of your parents was actually right when you was claiming that you was Indians, you know. But nevertheless, like where I live, there's a big population of Seminole Indians around, so-called Seminole Indians, which are Reubenites, all right. And they just look like a whole bunch of so-called black people. You know, you ask people on face value about, oh, you going over to this little town or this little city, ain't nothing but black folks over there. But in reality, is pretty much all Reubenites, all right? So-called Seminole Indians, which look like so-called black people, all right? But nevertheless, you know, hey, there was like, you know, a brother that I was talking to, and, you know, and this brother was in the truth, and he was, you know, thinking he was from the tribe of Judah. But I was looking at the brother, and I was like, you know, one of the traits of, you know, like so-called natives, you know, the Native American Indians, or like the Reubenites, the Seminole Indians, is that they don't really grow facial hair, man. You can look up a lot of Native American images, all right, and see that a lot of Native Americans they can't grow facial hair, all right. And then that's another way you can tell the difference between a so-called Native American, all right, or like the tribe of Gad versus the tribe of Issachar. Issachar can grow beards, but Gad really don't grow beards like that. Right? Not that they don't, they just can't. It's just not in their DNA like that, more or less to say. All right. But nevertheless, I was talking to this one brother, and I was telling him that I was like, you know, obviously he's in the truth. He should have a beard, but he just can't grow a beard. I was like, well, when you look at like Reuben, when you look at Gad, they can't necessarily grow facial hair like that, you know, and that's just one of the traits that they have. All right. But nevertheless, things are a lot deeper than just skin. But nevertheless, let's get to how we got to where we at now. All right. This is Deuteronomy 28 and verse 64. These are going into the curses that will befall Israel. All right. It says, and Yahweh shall scatter thee among all people from one end of the earth, even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods, which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. Jump down to verse 68. And Yahweh shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships by the way whereof I spake unto you. Thou shalt see it no more. And there thou shalt be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you. So these are the things that would befall Israel for not hearkening into the word of the Lord. Now, the Lord also told us not to really be mingling with these other nations and things like that, as far as having kids with them. And then because of the fact that the mothers could raise them up under their beliefs or whatever that they got going on. But nevertheless, hey, you think that if we got these curses to fall upon us, that happened because we didn't hearken into the Lord. How much more do you think once we got scattered amongst these nations, we will be intermingling with these other people? All right. And plus, what I just read in verse 68 about us being sold into slavery. All right. We were sold on the slave auction blocks. All right. To the slave master. Now we had to do whatever they wanted us to do. So if, you know, again, they was, how do I say, ripping our families apart, breeding us and certain things like this and that, man. All right. And you know, there was a big thing that was going on where these Edomite women, you know, and they even had a law to where, you know, these Edomite women could technically marry, the slave men, but they would basically have to take the status of being a slave, and any child that they had with them basically would be a slave until I believe the age of 18 or something like that. But nevertheless, that it was so much in the law that so much going on with that they actually made a law about this because these so-called white women, all right, wanted to be with Jake, all right, even as you see it today, man, all right. But nevertheless, going back up to verse 64, how we would be scattered into all different nations amongst all these other people. All right. So this is where we at now. All right. So I'm going to go from there to the book of Nehemiah, chapter 9 and verse 2. Now, going back to what we just read, we was going to be scattered into all, the four corners of the earth into every nation. All right. This is Nehemiah 9 and 2. And the seed of Israel. All right. Salah. This is not what I was looking for. Slack, give me 1 second. Where is it at? Oh, there. Give me 1 second. Thought it was in 12. Give me 1 second. Salakia, let me look this here up. Oh, Salak, I was in the wrong book. Ezra. This is Ezra chapter 9 and verse 2. It says, for they have taken their daughters. Let me go back up. This is Ezra 9 and 1. Now, when these things were done, the princes came to me saying, the people of Israel and the priests and the Levites have not separated themselves from the people of the lands. All right. So what? Going back to what we was reading in Deuteronomy 28 and verse 64, we will be scattered into the four corners of the earth. All right. Now here in Ezra 9, it says, now when these things were done, the princes came to me saying, the people of Israel and the priests and the Levites have not separated themselves from the people of the land, doing according to their abominations, even the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Jebusites, the Amorites, the Moabites, the Egyptians, and the Amorites. For they have taken of their daughters for themselves and for their sons. All right. So going back into what the scriptures say, basically you are what your father is. All right. They declared their pedigrees basically from their fathers. All right. They're going back to that seed. All right. Like I said, when you go plant any kind of vegetable anywhere. All right. You try to plant the seed anywhere on the earth, you still going to wind up getting that same vegetable or whatever it was that you planted. All right. Hey, man, you could take a orange seed and plant it in the ground. All right. You can take an orange seed and plant it in basically like a hydroponic system into water. All right. You'll see, like they say, we got hydroponic tomatoes, which grow bigger and more vibrant and so on and so forth. Oh, these are hydroponically grown and these are just grown naturally in the ground. But at the end of the day, you still got a tomato, right? Just because you're growing it in water is not going to change a tomato from being a tomato. All right. The same thing with, because the man's seed is basically, it's his sperm. It's the same thing. All right. So it says, for they have taken their daughters for themselves and their sons. All right. So again, for they have taken their daughters for themselves and for their sons. So what? They wound up taking their women. All right. The Israelite men was taking their women and impregnating them. Again, what do you get at the end of the day? You're still going to get Israelites. All right. So we're talking about all these Canaanite women, Hittite women, Perizzite women, Jebusite women, Amorite women, or Ammonites, which are the Japanese women, Moabites, which are Chinese women, Egyptians and Amorites. These are like Africans, right? So these Israelites took all these different women and had babies with them. All right. And what kind of babies did they have? They were still Israelite babies. All right. No matter what they look like. All right. So what? Just like modern days today, if you have a so-called black man having a child with a Japanese woman, it's still a so-called black child. All right. Or with a Chinese woman, still a so-called black child, because that's what the seed is that is coming from that male. All right. Verse 2 again, for they have taken of their daughters and for themselves and for their sons, so that the holy seed have mingled themselves with the people of those lands. Yea, the hand of the princes and the rulers have been chief in this trespass. All right. Well, let me read Let me read the next one. It says, verse 3. And when I heard this thing, I rent my garment and my mantle and plucked off my hair of my head and my beard and sat down astonished. All right, because now look at what we got going on today, man. All right, if you could just be like, oh, well, the Israelites are the so-called black people, right? Well, really, you had other dark nations. All the nations was actually so-called black people beforehand. All right, but nevertheless, it would be easy for us to just point out nowadays, all the so-called Negroes, the so-called Latinos and Native Americans. If you visually look like this, then this is who you are. But however, we know according to history, people always bring up, oh, we're all mixed. Look at the slave trade. Everybody was mixed and this and that. Well, that don't matter how much you mix your damn self up. It goes back to whatever your father is, man. All right. So, you know, you can have a so-called black man impregnate a so-called white woman all the way down to these babies come out looking straight white. Now that white child, or Blake Griffin in their example, right? Their Blake Griffin's son looked like Macaulay Culkin. Now, if this child going to start having babies with Chinese women, all right, now the baby going to be looking mixed between a so-called white man and a Chinese man. All right, you wouldn't even think that this man is a so-called Haitian at the end of the day, man. All right, this is why you would be astonished. Like, how the hell is this a Levite? How the hell is this a so-called Haitian when he look white and Chinese like a motherfucker, man? It don't matter what you look like. It's going back to the seed and the lineage of where you come from, all right? So let me go from there to the book of Daniel, chapter 9, verse 8. It says, O Yahweh, to us belong a confusion of face, to our kings, to our princes, to our fathers, because we have sinned against thee. All right, going into what? First of all, you know, there had to be a falling away first. We didn't know who we were. We don't know, you know, about the law, statutes, commandments, our power, his name, and so on and so forth. Because why? We become strangers into our own house. All right, but not just that. We've been the same way that we fell away from the knowledge of who we were, you know, about keeping the law, statutes, and commandments and all these different things and worshiping all these other gods and thinking we this and thinking we that. The same way with our so-called skin color, you know, like I said, Blake Griffin and his son, right? Looking like Macaulay Culkin. Now, if they don't know that they Israelites or whatever, whatnot, they just telling each other and that boy grew up and he forget about his grandfather and so on and so forth. And they just start calling themselves so-called white people down the line and start filling out paperwork and thinking they're so-called white people. And his great-great-great-great-grandkids go back and like, well, my grandfather was a white man. My grandfather was a white man, and so on and so forth. They wouldn't even know that their great, all going all the way back was a so-called Haitian. Hey, man, this is what it is, man. He's still Israelites, all right? So what? Now, you know, that's why we have to try the spirit by the spirit, all right? That's why we can't just walk, you know, a so-called white person walk up to the camp. Oh, get away, you a goddamn Edomite. Because why? You might not be an actual Edomite, all right? We actually had an example like this happen over the weekend at camp, man. We had a so-called white-looking man walk up, you know, and we was actually dealing with him in the scriptures, you know, and homeboy knew a lot of scriptures and things like that, man. All right, so, hey, we don't know exactly, and he said he married a so-called black woman, you know, which that don't really matter who he married, but nevertheless, you know, hey, his spirit seemed to be comfortable around her or whatever, whatnot, but hey, he could have been an Israelite, all right? So we're not really based off of your own skin color, all right, going into these here scriptures, because when you look into history, we would be scattered into the four corners of the earth, all right? We started mingling with these other nations. Our sons took the men and their sons wound up taking everybody else's daughters, these other nations' daughters, and producing seed with them, all right? So now these babies don't look the same as what they would naturally look like, all right? So what that and then you growing up in how do I say, falling out the different laws, statutes, commandments, and customs and religions and things like that, and you forget that, you know, you forget of who you really were, man. You know what I'm saying? Well, I grew up just like here, man. You know, what language did the so-called Negroes speak before they came over here on cargo slave ships? You know, well, I don't fucking know, because shit, as long as I was born, my mom and daddy spoke English, and their mom and daddy spoke English, and I don't know what really happened before that. You know, it was the so-called passed down. You know, that's how easy it is to forget certain things. Like, well, you know, well, my parents told me this and my parents told me that. That's all we knew. You know, we just thought that we was X, Y, and Z. You know, so this is where this confusion of face come, not just, you know, as a physical situation, but also a little deeper than that. You don't know where your roots come from, man. Just like all of us Israelites, we never even knew that we was actually Hebrew Israelites. We thought we was Christians or Jehovah's Witnesses or whatever, whatnot, growing up here in Babylon, man. We thought we was American citizens, you know. We thought that we was just so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. We never knew that we was Israelites. We was reading the Bible about people that we didn't even realize we was reading a book about our own selves, man. All right? That's how far gone we were when it comes to the confusion of face. All right? You can have so-called black people inside a church reading the Bible 40, 50 years, don't even realize they're reading a story about themselves. Because why? They didn't forget who they were. All right? Now you picking up this new culture, so-called black culture, eating chitlins and collard greens and shit like that. You know what I'm saying? That's not what you was eating beforehand. The so-called white man gave you the scraps on a farm, man, and you picked that up. This is not your culture like that, man. All right. Let me continue on from there to the book of Acts. Here's a prime example of us being scattered among the four corners of the earth, and this was even going on back then. This is Acts chapter 2, verse 5. And they were dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, all right? Now, Jews, basically Israelites, all right? But in reality, this point in time was mainly the southern kingdom, all right? The northern kingdom was already basically over here in America at this point in time, all right? But nevertheless, it says there was dwelling at Jerusalem Jews, or the southern kingdom, but nevertheless, they're Israelites, all right? Devout men out of every nation under heaven. Now, this is the stumbling block when it says out of every nation under heaven. Some people be like, oh, that's spiritual Israelites. They just believe on God and they gave their life over to Jesus. So now they're Israel. No, you have to go back into the history and the prophecies. We would be scattered into every nation and among the four corners of the earth, meaning that we would be, it's just like, you grew up in a big family, your grandma, your grandpa, they got a whole bunch of kids. They kids have a whole bunch of kids, but y'all all grew up in one little area, right? But now all these kids decide to move out of that, let's say, state. Y'all was all born in Georgia, right? Your whole family live in Georgia, but now the grandkids all decide to leave and move out of Georgia and live in these different states, and they have families in these different states and start these families on down and so on and so forth. When it comes time to family reunion, you're gonna have everybody coming in from out of town back to their main home. Well, we was all basically, we all grew up in this, Georgia red clay. We all grew up around here, whatever, whatnot. But now that we done moved out, we had kids over here, and let's say one of your sons then went off into the military, went across seas, overseas, and, stationed in Japan or something like that, find a Japanese woman, have kids with that woman. Now the child coming back speaking, Japanese and so on and so forth. Now they come back over here with a Japanese American accent, English accent, speaking Japanese. Just because they talk a little different don't mean that they, well, my father was just stationed over here, motherfucker. That's why I was over here and I wound up was being born over there. You see what I'm saying? But nevertheless, when I was growing up in school, hearing about a couple of my friends that clearly I can give you two examples of both basically Edomites. All right. One was born in Saudi Arabia and the other one was born in Guam. Right. And I was looking at them like, what you mean, bitch, you was born in Saudi Arabia? What the fuck? You grew up and was born in Saudi Arabia? Bitch, you don't look like you was born in Saudi Arabia to me. But then come to find out, oh yeah, my dad was stationed over there in the military. Oh fuck, why was I so dumb to even think you couldn't have been born over there? Because you look like a regular ass white woman, But continuing on, Acts 2 and 5, and they were dwelling at Jerusalem, Jews, devout men out of every nation under heaven. Now, when this was noise abroad, the multitude came together, and they were confounded, because that every man heard them speaking his own language. And they were all amazed and marveled, saying one to another, behold, are not all these which speak Galilean? And how hear we every man in our own tongue wherein we were born? All right. So now they're going to go into where these people actually came out of, what nations these people was living in. All right. But it don't mean that these people were of these nations. All right. It's not saying these are these so-called race of people. This is just where they was living at. All right. This is just where they so-called resided at. All right. This is where they so-called male came to. You know what I mean? It says Parthians, Medes, Elamites, and dwellers in Mesopotamia and Judea, Cappadocia, and Pontus, and Asia, Pargyria, Pamphylia, and Egypt, and parts of Libya, about Cyrene, and strangers of Rome, Jews and proselytes, Cretes and Arabians, we do hear them speak in our tongue and wonderful works of the Most High. All right. So going into all of these things, man, these aren't actual Romans as far as being Edomites, or Libyans as far as being Africans, or Egyptians as being Africans, or Asians, or Asia, being, actual Asians living in Asia, or like from like Moab or Ammon. All right. These are actually just Jake that's living over in these areas. All right. Because why? We were scattered into the four corners of the earth. All right. This is why the Israelites had to make their pilgrimage back over there. All right. But nevertheless, these are all Israelites. All right. That just lived in these different places. Like it says, verse 11, Cretes and Arabians. These Arabians ain't like Ishmael and them. That's not what they talking about. These are just Israelites that live over in these lands. All right. But continuing on from there, we're going to go to the book of Ezekiel. Ezekiel 37 and I want to say verse 20. verse 21. Ezekiel 37 and 21. And say, well, let me go to verse 20. Well, let me go to verse 21. And say unto them, thus saith Yahweh power, behold, I will take the children of Israel from among the heathen, whether they be gone, and will gather them on every side and bring them into their own land. All right. So what? The Most High said he was going to scatter us into the four corners of the earth. All right. Into all different nations. Then we just read about how, Israelites was coming back to Jerusalem. All right. But they was coming out of all different nations. All right. But nevertheless, the Most High said he was going to gather up the children of Israel from basically the four corners of the earth where he had scattered them, all right, and bring them back, all right? But these are actual Israelites, no matter what they outside look like, what they look like on the outside, whether they be looking Chinese, Japanese, Arab, like a so-called white person, whatever, whatnot, man. Blonde hair, blue eyes, whatever, man. They all Israelites. Or even if they so-called look like they black, don't mean that they Israelites, all right? Couple examples. Tia and Tamara, the Tia and Tamara twins. These are not Israelites. These are Edomites. All right. Lauren London, Nunu from ATL. That's not a so-called black woman. That's an Amalekite. All right. So-called white woman. All right. That's basically, she an Edomite from the tribe of Amalek. All right. That's a so-called white woman. All right. You got like what? Cameron Diaz, Christina Aguilera. These are all these are Israelites basically from the Northern Kingdom. All right. But nevertheless, they don't look as such. You see what I'm saying? Barack Obama. All right. They'd be like, well, he's half, Kenyan and half white person. Well, he's a Hamite at the end of the damn day. All right. No matter, we're not going based off of your skin color. All right. It's going back to what your father's seed was. All right. So I just wanted to put that out there because, that's one of these spirits that's out there about the black only Israelite movement. And, the so-called Hispanics and Latinos, they're not Israelites because they don't look black. All right, there's something completely different, in which we can go into the scriptures and we could, prove to you that, the people that was over here when Columbus and them came was the Israelites. All right, that was the Northern Kingdom. That's where where you get the term the 10 lost tribes from. All right, and also going into, I could probably do a lesson on this, another lesson on this, which I've done it in the past, but Christopher Columbus wound up hiring this dude named Luis de Torres, all right, on his first journey over here. Now, Luis de Torres was basically a Jew, all right, that was basically living in Spain during the time of the expulsion of the Jews in Spain, all right, which also, now you got to put these things in a timeline because you'll get fucked up on these different names of these different people. But, at the end of the Dark Ages, when Jake was ruling over there, all right, you had the Renaissance era or the rebirth when Esau was taking over. All right. So now when you go back into history, all right, over in Spain, where you had the Moors, all right, that was living over there. These was Israelites. All right. They just practiced a different religion, which was Islam. All right. But these was actually still Israelites living over there. Now, around the same time where the so-called Jews or the Moors was being expelled from over there. All right. Columbus wound up taking one of those Jews or the Israelites that spoke Hebrew. All right. Which would have been a so-called Negro from over there. All right, just like they tell you that the first slave ships came from out of Spain, not from Africa. All right, you put the timeline together. This is all the same thing, man. All right, when Esau was taking over Spain and things like that. All right, and then they wanted, when you think about it, when the Moors was living in Spain, the Israelites was living in Spain as the Moors, they was the Spaniards. All right, but then the so-called Edomite or the so-called white man came over there and took over and called himself the Spaniards. All right, but nevertheless, just like how they came over here and found the so-called Native Americans. All right, but they were basically Europeans that did this. But then now all of a sudden, they well, whatever they want to call themselves. But nevertheless, now they call themselves Americans. All right, the Americans didn't come over here and take over America by slaying all the Americans. That just don't make sense. They still in identities and things like that. But nevertheless, going back into the Dark Ages when Jake was ruling, all right, coinciding with the same time where Jake got expelled out of Spain. All right, and these so-called, not so-called, but the Israelites was being kicked out over there. All right. This is why he brought this dude, Luis de Torres, which would have been from the Southern Kingdom, because he spoke Hebrew. All right. And he was looking to find the lost tribes of Israel over here in America. That's why he brought a Hebrew interpreter to come over here to speak to their brethren. They already knew who they were. All right. But nevertheless, just touching on that a little bit. But nevertheless, I just wanted to bring that out to clear up some of these things, man, especially in these latter days, man, with a lot of Israelites starting to wake up and things like that, man. Not all Israelites is going to look the same, man. All right. And there's going to be a lot of Israelites, you might see some camps looking all kind of different ways. I'm like, hold up. All I see is, so-called Chinese people and so-called white people in this camp talking about so-called white man going into slavery, and the Lord is only coming back to save Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, but don't none of y'all fit that description. All y'all look Chinese and shit. Chinese and white. What the fuck is going on here? But in reality, hey man, the spirit bears witness with our spirit that we are the children of the Most High, man. This is not a skin color type of thing, man. All right, it's a lot deeper than that, man. All right, and in reality, they out here doing all these DNA tests, which is all some bullshit. But in reality, the Lord is coming back and doing the real DNA test, man. All right, because you are what your father is, man. And if that seed line don't go back unto an Israelite, then you're not an Israelite, man. All right. But nevertheless, we're going to go ahead and close out with that. Lord willing, this here was edifying into the elect. Until next time, I say, call halal Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shah, Bahashim, Rachakodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone that taught us this truth and that rule well. And salutation and much love for you. I can pushing this truth and sincerity in the four corners of the earth and enduring afflictions to feed and edify the elect. Until next time, I say, stay strong and shalom.